Welcome to the first WION-VOA co-production after the U.S. presidential election handed the White House back to President-elect Donald Trump. I'm your host, Susan Tehrani, coming to you live from New York City. Joining us live on this broadcast is VOA's Jessica Stone from the White House and Caroline Presutti from Florida. Welcome to you both. It's great to have everyone on. Republicans won control of the U.S. Senate early on Wednesday, a major victory that will give President-elect Donald Trump a key tool for enacting his legislative agenda. VOA's congressional correspondent Katherine Gibson has more from Washington. Take a listen.
For the first time in 4 years, Republicans have won a majority in the U.S. Senate.
This is certainly a happy day for the GOP.
Republicans secured their expected wins in the key swing state of Pennsylvania.
It looks like we're headed in a very good direction.
And in Texas, Democrat Colin Allred failed to beat Republican Senator Ted Cruz.
I will fight for you, for your jobs, for your safety, and for your constitutional rights.
All 435 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives were also up for re-election, with Republicans expected to hold on to their control of the lower chamber. In the Senate races, Democrats did secure wins in California.
I'm committed to taking on the big fights to protect our freedoms and to protect our democracy.
Control of the Senate was decided by a few key races where the outcome was uncertain. Races such as in Ohio and in Montana, where Republican Tim Sheehy beat incumbent Democratic Senator John Tester.
So I want to thank the American people for the...
With control of the U.S. Senate, Trump will be able to confirm his nominees to the highest court in the land, the U.S. Supreme Court, and has a smoother path to passing his legislative agenda.
With a majority for Donald Trump, he can not only confirm his cabinet secretaries without having to get Democratic support, but also sub-cabinet secretaries. There's thousands of appointments to be made within the executive branch, and especially within the courts.
Republicans last controlled both chambers of Congress during the first 2 years of Trump's first term as president in 2017. Katherine Gibson, VOA News.
I will fight for you, for your family, and your future every single day.
All right, for additional reporting, we are joined by VOA's Caroline Presutti live from West Palm Beach, Florida. Great to see you, Caroline. Since the Republican Congress means Trump's nominations to his cabinets are more likely to get the post, what are some of the names we're seeing as possible leaders of key government agencies right now?
We're actually seeing a lot of names, and he made his first announcement yesterday, and that was Susie Wiles to be his chief of staff. She will be the first female chief of staff in our nation's history. Now, Susie Wiles isn't an unknown to politics. She was busy in politics as early as the 1980 election of President Reagan to the presidency. So she also was introduced. I don't know if you remember when Trump gave his victory speech here in West Palm Beach, Florida, he called her to the microphone and she demurred. She was too shy to actually take the microphone. So she'll be a chief of staff that doesn't want the limelight, always a good quality for a chief of staff. She also was with Trump all during the campaign, very instrumental in organizing his schedule, but specifically organizing the people around him. She took care of the manifest on the Trump plane, deciding who would fly with him and who would not. So that would be Susie Wiles as his first appointment. You know, the laws guarantee that he does ensure a transition team before the inauguration, which is January 20th. So we will look for those cabinet appointments between now and January. Lots of names, as you say. Elon Musk is being rumored to be the one to find government waste. Also, RFK Jr. is to be the one who is assigned to some health position, some medical position within the government. Even Florida Senator Marco Rubio from here in Florida is rumored to be up for Secretary of State. So you'll continue to hear all of these names bantered about. And it is a constant stream of cars going inside Mar-a-Lago, about a kilometer away from us that way. And people wanting to interview, being called down to interview for these positions. And that is how President-elect Trump is keeping busy these days. The celebratory, the congratulatory parties are winding down, and now he's getting down to business right away.
Very interesting. We also heard possibly someone like Brian Hook might be involved in foreign policy and the State Department as well. We'll be waiting for confirmation regarding that. And regardless of who controls Congress, President-elect Trump does have plans for day one of his presidency, doesn't he? What policies is he expected to tackle first, and why?
So that's another thing that he's doing inside his house here at Mar-a-Lago. He's looking at some executive orders that he could take. Presidents tend to do this when they want to flip whatever the president before them put into place. This president specifically has talked about immigration. That is number one on President-elect Trump's list. And he has said that he will have a mass deportation of undocumented immigrants as soon as he gets into office. So look for that to happen his first week, if not physically happening, to get the people in line and the procedures in line to do that. How he does that, he hasn't been very clear on the details. We've asked him, but that remains to be seen. And then the second thing that he wants to do is the economy. We did see a boost, though, the day after the election. Our Dow Jones Industrial Average stock market went up 15,000 points. Also, Bitcoin took off. So you're already seeing a bump along with yesterday's drop in our interest rate. We also saw a bump in the Dow Jones yesterday.
Very interesting. Thank you so much, Caroline, for all of those insights.
My pleasure.
Well, U.S. allies in Asia are congratulating Donald Trump on his decisive victory in Tuesday's U.S. presidential election. But many in Asia also worry about what the return of his America First foreign policy means for their countries. As VOA's Bill Gallo reports from Seoul, South Korea. Let's take a look.
In his first term as president, Donald Trump mixed high-profile threats with diplomacy as he pursued an unpredictable foreign policy. With Trump now returning to office, U.S. allies and partners in Asia are trying to figure out what America First Round 2 means for them. In South Korea, President Yoon Suk-yeol was optimistic on Thursday, saying he and Trump will build a perfect security posture.
아시아 태평양 또 글로벌 지역에서
We talked about having strong solidarity and partnership in the Asia-Pacific and global region based on the South Korea-US alliance.
그리고 딱 북핵에 대한 얘기보다도 북한에 대한 관심을 좀 가지고 계신지 먼저 얘기를 좀 하셨습니다.
Many in Seoul are concerned Trump could strike a deal with North Korea, possibly without consulting the South. Trump has also continued to push South Korea to pay much more to host U.S. troops, leading many in Seoul to question just how committed Washington is to its defense. Japan has similar worries, although Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba called his first talks with Trump very friendly. Ishiba's ruling party last month suffered a major election defeat. If he survives as prime minister, some fear a weakened Ishiba could have trouble pushing back on Trump's demands.
To deal successfully with Mr. Trump, you need to be strong. You need to be well endowed with your political capital. And that's the thing that the Japanese leaders, Ishiba, whoever, cannot show and cannot have.
In Taiwan, the government insisted its ties with the U.S. remain rock solid. But it also warned China may try to test the new U.S. president through continued military intimidation of the island. Trump has sent mixed messages on Taiwan, complaining it steals U.S. manufacturing jobs and should pay if it wants U.S. protection. There are also widespread concerns about more Trump tariffs and how an expanded U.S.-China trade war would affect the region. Here in Asia, many expect a transition away from the more values-based diplomacy of President Joe Biden towards something more transactional under Trump. But what exactly that looks like is not clear. Bill Gallo, VOA News, Seoul, South Korea.
All right, joining us live for additional reporting from the White House is VOA's Jessica Stone. Hi, Jessica, and great to see you. Well, Donald Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India have long had a close relationship. How do we expect this relationship to play out in a second Trump White House in terms of policy?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious by now that both political parties in this country, both Republicans and Democrats, are united on the need to deal with Chinese aggression, and certainly the incoming Trump administration is no different. In fact, many of the Biden policies that Trump began, especially on trade, were continued under the Biden administration. So that could create openings for India in certain sectors like semiconductors, solar panels, especially if Trump hikes those Chinese tariffs even further up, as he has promised to do. But he doesn't necessarily protect his friends either. I think we see ample evidence of that with the relationship with Europe under the previous Trump administration. And for example, on India itself, he's called them the biggest abuser and vowed reciprocal tariffs on items from New Delhi, particularly an 80% import duties on U.S.-made motorcycles. In the White House, Trump initiated trade investigations and imposed tariffs against India, so they were not without some friction there. And he also removed New Delhi from a duty-free program. So I think it's important to point out that there should be opportunities for New Delhi under this new relationship, but also there will be some efforts to level the playing field if, in fact, the Trump administration sees that it is not level.
And ahead of Tuesday's election, we saw specific outreach from the president-elect's campaign to Hindu Americans. What impact do we expect to see for Hindus and their religious rights here in the United States?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch the Indian media and the Indian American media and op-eds react to that. It's clear that it was very touching to many of them and very important to them to feel heard, especially on the issue of religious rights. And we saw that Truth Social post right before the election on Diwali, basically saying from Trump that the violence against Hindus and other religious minorities would, quote, never have happened on his watch. Now, Indian Americans in this country, they've had a long history of supporting Democrats. They still supported Harris overwhelmingly. They are now the second largest immigrant voting bloc in the United States at 5.2 million people. And Biden's administration certainly made their own outreaches, hosting Modi for that state dinner, and even Harris having a lunch with Modi at the State Department and hosting with Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State. But it is also clear from the exit polling, Susan, that Republicans are making inroads with Asian Americans. In fact, there was a 5-point swing towards Trump. Certainly Harris winning the majority of Asian American votes, but a 5-point swing in one election cycle. And we've seen a steady drumbeat of Asian Americans going towards the Republican candidate. Here's how one Indian American entrepreneur wrote in an op-ed in Fortune about it. He said, look, Indian Americans are pragmatic voters who value practical issues like the economy, opportunity, legal immigration, and personal freedom. So I think it's very clear that this has struck a note with the Indian American community regarding their religious rights. They're also seeing their own faces within the Republican Party increasingly with the likes of Nikki Haley. Of course, now we have an incoming second lady who is Indian American. So that is reaching into the community. But in terms of policy, it's not clear that it's going to translate right away.
Yeah, very fascinating. So important. Jessica, great to talk to you. Thank you so much. Happy weekend. I hope you get a chance to rest a bit after this week.
You as well. Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.